Starting locks can feel like a big decision, not just because they're a commitment, but also because there are different ways to do them. If you're anything like me, you've probably gone down that rabbit hole trying to figure out what is the best technique or method to start them. But the truth is that there isn't a one-size-fits-all method. And in fact, some methods work better for some hair types and other methods work better for other hair types. So in this video, we will be talking about all the ways that you can start your locks, and by the end, you will be able to figure out which one is the best for you. But real quick, if you love locks, then be sure to let me know by leaving a thumbs up in this video. And if you already started your journey, then leave me a comment letting me know which method you use to start yours. There are 11 methods that I'm going to be talking about, and I will be giving a quick description of how each of these work. But if you want more of a detailed step-by-step tutorial, I've carefully selected and linked some of the best tutorials that I could find from other YouTube creators who explain each of these different techniques clearly. The first method is the freeform, or also known as the neglect method. And as the name suggests, this is just letting your hair to do whatever it wants to do. There is no retwisting or twisting or any type of technique involved at all. The pros to this technique is that it's completely natural. There are no tools required. It's free and there's very little maintenance involved. All you have to do is just wash your hair. The cons of this technique are that it can take years for it to form, and it's going to look very messy and frizzy for a long time. The other thing is that you don't have control over the size, the shape, or the thickness of your locks. So one might be really thin, another could be really thick, one could be flat, the other one could be round. A lot of people don't really mind that, those who start with the freeform method. But if you wanted a little bit more control over the parting sizes, then you can just separate your roots every time you wash your locks. The freeform method works on all hair types, and it's best for anyone with a lot of patience and whoever wants to just have a completely natural look. The next method is the twist and rip method. And I'm going to demonstrate with this little bit of yarn. So what you basically do is, let's say you take a section of your hair and you're going to twist it a couple of times. And then you're going to take the ends, you're going to grab two pieces, or you're going to split it into two, and you're going to pull. And that's going to create a little knot up here. Then you twist all of that again together, and you grab two different parts here. So you split it in a different place now, and you do the same. You pull those two apart. So just like the name suggests, you twist and then you rip. You continue that. You twist and then you rip. And as you do that, it's going to continue to create little knots all over. Now it's going to look extremely messy, so something else that you can do after you do the entire lock is to palm roll it. So essentially you would be rolling it between your hands to create kind of that uniform round shape. The benefits of this hairstyle are that it doesn't require any tools to start, so you can do this technique at home. Also, it doesn't damage the hair structure if you're doing it carefully. So if you pull to make those knots gently, then it will keep your hair still healthy. And finally, you have full control over the sectioning of your roots, and so you can decide how thick or thin you want your locks to be. The downside is that it's prone to unraveling, so you don't want to do this style if you have very short hair. Also, it's time consuming, and it will create a very messy look for quite some time with a lot of frizz. The twist and rip method is best for type 1, type 2, and some type 3 hair. Next, we have the backcombing method. So for this, we're gonna take a strand of hair and you're gonna take a comb. It could be a comb like this or a lice comb. And essentially, you're going to grab the strand from the bottom here. So ignore my hand up here, but you're gonna grab the strand from here, and then you're gonna take this other hand and brush upwards so that you create these knots from the top all the way down to the bottom. So in a way, you're just creating, you're brushing backwards basically. And just like the previous method, once you're done, you're gonna have a lot of frizziness and it's gonna kind of look a little bit out of control. So to give it kind of that round shape, you're just gonna take that lock and roll it between your hands, and that's gonna start to encourage that round shape for your locks. The benefits of this method are that it requires minimal tools. It's easy enough that you can do it at home. And when you part your scalp, you can have control over the size of your locks, just like the previous method. But the difference between this one and the twist and rip is that this one will hold the knots a little bit better. And so you can start this one on about medium length hair. The downsides to this method are that it can be very time intensive. So it'll take quite some time for you to get through your entire head to do your locks. Another thing is that your locks are going to look very frizzy and quite messy for some time. It's possible for you also to see a lot of loops during the maturing process. And finally, you might experience quite a bit of shrinkage. The backcombing method is best for type 1 and type 2 hair. The next method is the crochet method, or as many people like to call it, the instant locks method. And this is when you use a crochet hook to tighten and create the lock. This method is typically done by locticians, but there are a lot of tutorials that teach you how to do it on your own if you're interested in that. But I'm just going to kind of give you a brief idea of how the technique works. So let's say that this again is your section of hair. Some locticians, what they'll do is they will take, my needle is bent, but imagine that it's straight. And they'll take a needle and just kind of create a lock by intertwining and knotting the hair just with the crochet needle alone. So they'll kind of knot it in the center, and then they'll take hair from the outside and just pull it in and out, in and out, in and out. And then they'll just kind of make it a little bit round. I don't particularly know how to do that technique on my own hair. So that's when you research it or look it up, they just, I don't know how else to describe it, but in essence, they work through the inner and the outer part of the lock, trying to knot it together. And then by the end, you have what looks like a perfect lock. Another way to do it is to start the locks or the knots with the backcombing or the twist and rip method, and then creating with the crochet needle a type of like a casing or a covering around the exterior of the lock. This allows the inner part to remain soft and flexible for the necessary movement that your hair needs to do naturally to form its knots, but without creating a super stiff lock. But that's just another way. And in the description, I linked 2 different videos that show these kind of techniques, how they work. But anyway, you could say it's like a basket weaving technique is the best way I could describe it, where the exterior parts are kind of taken out like this and then back in, and they're just kind of flip-flopped between the front and the back of the lock. And so it doesn't get into the inner part. It just works itself around the outer part, and it helps to also bring in any frizzy hair and things like that. But it does create a neat lock. Either of those 2 methods are going to create a crochet lock. The benefits of this method are that you're going to walk out of your hair appointment with what look like mature locks. And depending on your hair type, you might actually experience less shrinkage than other methods that are discussed in this video. Another really good thing is that with this method, your locks are less likely to untangle just by the nature of how the crochet creates those knots. And also, if after you get your locks done, you want to maintain them on your own instead of going to a loctician every 8 weeks or so, then it's a method that is not too difficult for DIY or home maintenance. The downsides to this method are that it's very time consuming. Also, if it's not done properly, it can cause quite a bit of hair breakage. And that's, you know, you don't want your hair damaged in the process of starting your lock journey. So you want to choose your loctician wisely. And finally, it's very painful, especially near the scalp, if they crochet to the edge of the root. So my recommendation is to always leave maybe 1 or 2 centimeters, leaning towards 2 centimeters of loose hair around the scalp to prevent too much tension on the scalp. If you have a very sensitive head, then maybe I would reconsider this technique altogether. Crocheting works for all hair types, and they're perfect for anybody who wants to have semi-mature looking locks from the very beginning. But also keep in mind that all hair works differently. So somebody's hair might adapt differently than yours when using the same method. My locks, even though they were crocheted, I still went through 3 years of frizz, loops, and shrinkage before my locks started looking uniform and mature. And if you're curious about how my locks transitioned from the very beginning all the way up until now, I will leave a link with my 7-year timeline. And that way you can see, if you have a similar hair to mine, how my hair type progressed. The next technique is a dread perm. And for this, you also have to go to a professional, and what they'll do is they'll put this product in your hair, which creates a chemical process in which it turns your hair into a coilier texture. And then from there, locks are formed. And personally, it's not my favorite or recommended method because it does create a chemical reaction that will permanently damage your hair. So I don't necessarily recommend it, but it does work better for people who have very dense or thick or extremely silky hair. And if the previous methods just are not working because the hair is too silky, then this might create the texture that the hair needs in order for it to start locking. Of course, also, if you're going to a professional, then it would include the appropriate parting on your scalp. And so then you do have control over the size of your locks in the long run. I guess that would be another benefit. But in contrast to that, it is not a natural process for your hair because it is permanently damaging it. And also it is expensive. Moving on to number 6, we have micro locks and sister locks. They're similar in some ways and very different in others. So in the way that they're similar is that they're very thin locks that are fairly easy to manipulate and style. But let's talk about their differences. Micro locks can be sectioned at the scalp in different ways. So different locticians might have different patterns or methods for doing that. They are thicker than sister locks and have a bit more texture to them. They're fluffier. The technique for micro locks is basically you have a section of hair. It's going to be a whole lot smaller than this. So let's pretend it's maybe like this. And the method is to twist it all the way through and then interlock it at the root. So interlocking basically means, I'll show you with more so you can see and get a better picture of that. But interlocking is when you have, let's say you have this formed into a lock and you want to secure the knot at the very root. So if this is the scalp here, then you would take the tip of that lock and kind of create a little opening here near the root. And then you would push this, this lock all the way through. So in the end, it creates a little bit of a knot here. Then you would go again, you would interlock it again from a different angle. If you kept interlocking through the same loop every time, it would just create a huge hole in your locks. So you would take it from a different angle and then go maybe through the side and do that same process. Usually locticians, and I think this is the best way to do it if you're gonna be interlocking, is to think of north, east, south, west. So you would start interlocking like this, then you would interlock it through the side, then you would come back in from this side, and then you would come in from this side. And that way it, you just don't want to repeat in the same hole. You don't want to keep putting the same lock through the same hole, because otherwise it will create like a big hole like this in the middle. So to avoid that, you just want to interlock through different sections or different parts at the very root. Now back to micro locks. This technique typically takes between 6 to 8 hours to complete. Sometimes it could go up to 10 hours, but usually it's just like a 6 to 8 hour window. And the average person has between 200 and 300 micro locks. Sisterlocks, on the other hand, it's a trademarked technique, and there's an organization or a lady who created this particular technique back in the 90s. And she now has a whole school on how to do this technique. Also, the way that the scalp is parted at the root there's like a special way to do it. So to do Sisterlocks, the loctician has to have training and certification through the organization itself. Now, Sisterlocks, the way that they differ from micro locks is, like I said, that the grid pattern on the scalp is a bit different. And I'm not 100% sure in which ways they're different, but they just have a very specific way of outlining the grid and to make sure that the locks are formed in a very particular way. The technique that they use is also different than micro locks because they interlock the entire thing. So just like I showed you where you interlock by pulling the hair through in different directions, they actually interlock the entire lock, not just near the scalp. So again, I'm not exactly sure how they do that, but I just know that that's the entire lock is made from interlocking only. In the end, the lock itself is going to kind of look like a mix between a twist and a braid, but there's not a whole lot of texture to them. So in the whole ensemble, it just kind of looks like strings or strands of hair. And the craziest thing is that it can take over a day to do an entire head of Sisterlocks. And this is because there's usually anywhere between 400 and 800 locks or Sisterlocks. It's a lot. Because of this, they can be styled much like loose hair, and Sisterlocks in particular hold a better curl than micro locks. The benefits of both of these methods are that there's very little maintenance actually needed after the first installation. They're easy to moisturize, and it's easy to oil the scalp if you needed to. And they look very clean and stylish and just elegant. It's a very nice hairstyle. The downsides to these methods are that they have to be done professionally. Sisterlocks in particular have to be done by a certified loctician who has completed the Sisterlocks course. Another thing, like I said, is that installation takes a very long time. And depending on the rates, this can mean that the lock installation is going to be really expensive, but that depends on each loctician's prices and expertise. And finally, if the locks are styled too tightly or there's not enough grip on some of the hairs because they're so small, then you can experience root thinning or your locks could fall out. Not all of them, of course, but there are some that if there's not enough hair to hold it at the root because the parts are so small, then that could potentially cause them to fall out. These methods work best for type 4 hair, and they'll actually work really well if you have maybe 2 or 3 inches of hair. So if you don't have a lot of hair to work with, then these could work out just fine. The next technique is the 2 and 3 strand twists. So for this technique, you're going to take a strand of hair and you're going to separate it. If you're doing 2 strands, if you're doing a 3 strand twist, you separate it into 3. But the technique in essence is that you twist one over the other. There's a whole method for how you should do this so that it doesn't unravel right away. In the description where I link those tutorials, I put one that you can learn the exact way to manipulate the hair in the right direction so that it doesn't unravel as soon as you do it and that it holds as long as possible. The benefits to this method are, first of all, that it's a very stylish way to start your locks. and they can look really neat, especially in the beginning. The other thing is that if you practice on your own hair over time, you can get this technique down real easy, and it doesn't take actually a lot of time to do once you've learned the technique. Eventually, as your locks mature, they will end up in that round shape. And because you are doing this on your own, even if you go to somebody to do them for you, then you have full control over the parting on your scalp, and so you can decide how thick you want them to be. One of the downsides is that they can unravel fairly quickly if the technique is not done properly. And when the technique is done to where they're a little bit tighter, still they'll require a little bit more maintenance than other methods so that they retain their lock formation until the point that they start to mature. Meanwhile, it's possible that you could experience quite a bit of frizz around the roots especially, and that twisty groove from the locks could take some time to even out as the locks mature, but it could take maybe a little bit longer than if you used a different method. 2 and 3 strand twists are ideal for type 4 and type 3 hair, and they will not hold at all in straight hair. The next method are comb coils, and for this method, you're going to take a section of hair and you're going to grab a comb, and it's going to be kind of hard for me to show you here, but basically you're going to take the comb from here, and as you brush through each of these hairs, you're going to be twisting. So something like that, and there would be like a twisting formation like this. So as you move the comb down, it creates a twist up here. And so you keep doing that until it turns it kind of into this rounded, coily lock. Not that. Like that. The benefits of comb coils is that it's great for thin and uniform locks, and also you have control over the size of your locks and the parting at the scalp. The downsides are that it is a little bit time intensive and you're gonna need somebody to help you with them. But the other thing is that consistent maintenance is gonna be needed so that they don't keep unraveling. Usually comb coils will last between 1 and 3 weeks. So there's gonna be, some type of maintenance, just light maintenance, so that they don't form together or that they stay in their coily shape for as long as possible. Until they start to mature. The next method are braids or braid locks. And for this method, you're going to take your hair and you're just going to make a simple braid. So something like this. I recommend that you don't pull too hard on your scalp, but you still want to have a tight and uniform braid. So essentially that's what it's going to look like. Some people do add extensions for the length, and you can do that as well. And then when it's time to remove them, you can just chop the extensions off. But you can, if your hair is long enough, you can just do the braid, and over time that's going to mature and it's going to transition into a lock. So the benefits, of course, are that it's an easy transition. It kind of avoids this very messy phase in the beginning, especially. But the downside is that because it has this braid pattern, it's going to take quite some time for the lock to mature in a way that that pattern fades out. So you're going to have a little bit of texture on your locks because of that for the beginning part until a little bit after your locks have matured. This method works well for type 4 hair and some type 3 hair. The next method is called the sponge lock method, and you're gonna need a sponge that looks like this. So you're gonna take that and basically just make circular motions on your scalp with that sponge. You could also actually use like a microfiber towel, and that would be called the towel rub method, but it works the same. I don't know which one is more effective, but you can try them and you can let me know. You're going to take the sponge, just circular motions. You're going to do this every single day, and it's going to slowly form sectioning on your locks. And they look fairly even based on what I've seen on YouTube and some pictures I looked into. But if you try this method, be sure to let me know how that turns out for you. This method, I would say, is closer to Freeform, except it helps to manage the size of your locks at the root a little bit better than Freeform. And it's a good method that can be used for type 4 hair. And last but not least, we have lock extensions. Lock extensions is a bit of a broad term, but under that umbrella, we can find faux locks, which are just made from synthetic hair, wool locks, which are made from yarn, and human hair extensions, which is made, of course, from human hair. The benefits about lock extensions are that they will work for any hair type and pretty much any length. So you don't have to have super long hair to have lock extensions installed. Another thing is that you're going to have pretty much perfect locks from day one without having to go through any of the stages that natural locks go through. So very little frizz, if any, no shrinkage, no loops or anything like that. And if that's kind of what you want to avoid or you want to skip over, extensions are going to be a good option for you. Finally, if you're on the fence about locks, then they're also a really good option, especially if you are curious or unsure about how they're going to look on you. Then you can try them out and see if you enjoy having them, then great. And if you happen not to like them, then you don't have to commit to the entire process and you can just get them removed. The downsides, however, are that they're pretty pricey and they do require special care. Lock extensions are great for any hair type, pretty much any hair length, and they're ideal for anyone who wants to try out locks without the full commitment. Those are all the methods. So let's do a quick little recap. The method that is going to require the least amount of maintenance are Freeform and sponge locks. The method that's going to give you the most professional looking locks from day one are micro locks, Sisterlocks, lock extensions, and in some cases, the crochet method. The methods that are least likely to unravel are crochet, micro locks, and Sisterlocks. The quickest method to start your locks can be either twists or comb coils on coily hair. And for straight hair, it could be either the twist and rip, the backcombing, or the crochet method. All of those kind of take about the same amount of time. And the method that will take the fastest to mature, now this definitely depends on your hair type, but I would say crochet and micro locks are among the fastest. Before I end this video, I want to leave you with 5 quick tips for starting your lock journey. Number 1 is that you want to prepare your hair and scalp for your locks. The way you can do this is, number 1, before starting your lock journey, maybe 2 weeks prior or a month prior, start washing your hair with the same shampoo that you're going to be using on your locks in the future. This is going to help to get your scalp prepared and adjusted to this new product, and it's going to make it a little bit easier for the transition when you have your hair in locks. Another thing you can do is to space out your washes a little bit more. So instead of washing every single day or every other day, maybe wait 2 to 3 days in between washes. And that's also going to help your scalp adjust so that when you start your lock journey and you're only washing your hair maybe once a week, then you don't have so much itchiness and discomfort. Finally, if you want to make sure that your hair is super clean, I recommend doing a hair detox, and what this entails is basically you soaking your hair in a mixture of water, baking soda, and apple cider vinegar. And you can let your hair rest in that for about 20 to 30 minutes and then just wash it off. The whole method, I have it in my website, so I can leave that link for you and you can check out that blog and test out my method if you're interested in that. The second tip I have is that you never use any heavy products in your locks. And this primarily includes hair wax, hair gels, or butters, or anything like that. Even if they're labeled like for dreadlocks or dreadlock wax or anything like that, never put it in your hair because it's never going to come out. Certain products are not water soluble and they're impossible to get out of locked hair. So it's only going to cause long-term buildup and possibly other problems down the road. So make sure that you steer clear from any buildup producing products. Number 3 is to always use a residue-free shampoo. And if you're not sure what kind of shampoo you can use on your locks, I have a video as well on that, and you can check it out in the description. Tip number 4 is to never go to bed with wet locks. So last week I made a video about mold and how mold can develop in our hair. If you're concerned about that, definitely check it out. But basically you want to make sure that your hair fully dries between, I would say, 8 to 10 hours or sooner. When your locks remain wet for more than 24 hours, then the possibility of mold grows exponentially. So to prevent them altogether or prevent mold altogether, you want to make sure that your hair dries before you go to sleep, and try to get it to dry as quick as you possibly can. And finally, a tip that I wish I would have known when I started my lock journey is to use a sleeping cap or a bonnet when you go to sleep. This is going to help reduce some of the frizz. It's going to help maintain your locks in more of a uniform shape so that they don't unravel. And most importantly, they're going to help reduce the lint that you would otherwise be getting probably from your bedding. Well, my friends, that is all for today. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, then please give it a thumbs up. And if you want to see more lock content, then please subscribe and hit the notification bell as well. I hope you have a beautiful week ahead, and I will see you on the next video. Bye.